publication of her first novel, Because of Winn-Dixie, in 2000, Kate Dicamillo has taken the children's publishing world by storm, winning both critical and popular acclaim and delighting a generation of readers with each new publication. Her work has been awarded stars, prizes, and a couple of coveted Newbery medals for The Tale of Despereaux in 2004, and most recently, Flora and Ulysses in 2014. Kate has written picture books, charming beginning chapter books, an inquisitive fable, and even a hybrid novel with illustrations and graphic sequences. At their core, these amazingly diverse projects all share distinctive voices, crystalline prose, and a great deal of heart. All told, Kate has 22 million, this is hard to wrap my head around, 22 million copies in print worldwide, and her books have been translated into 41 languages. This beloved storyteller was named the U.S. National Ambassador for Young People's Literature in 2014 and has spent the last 2 years crisscrossing the nation, sharing her belief in the power of stories. It is my enormous pleasure to introduce you to the yarn spinner extraordinaire, Kate Dicamillo. Well, I don't know how many of you have ever had the opportunity to meet Kate and hear her speak, so I was hoping that in the course of our conversation we can find out a little bit about her and her writing and her ambassadorship. So you've described yourself.
How many questions are on there?
A couple. You've described yourself as a late bloomer.
I have. Yes, I am a late bloomer. Do you want me to talk about that, late blooming at great length?
Well, I was going to actually ask a question about.
Oh, sorry.
She published her first book at the age of 36. But how did you find your voice as a writer?
So when you say 36, I have to say that sounds tragically young now. It's like, wow, I always thought it took me so long to get started. How did I find my voice? Well, when I go out and talk to kids, and I have a PowerPoint, because you're supposed to have a PowerPoint now, right? And for a long time I didn't have a PowerPoint. Now I have one, and I always start, well, I start with me as a kid, but then I tell them about being in college and having a professor, an English professor, who, this is a direct quote, he said, "You have a certain facility with words. You should consider graduate school," end quote. And I was 20 years old, and I thought he was speaking to me in some kind of code, and that what he was trying to tell me was that I was the most wildly talented writer that he had ever encountered. And I thought, why should I bother with graduate school? I'm just going to go be a writer. So I got black turtlenecks. And
Good start.
Yeah, right. And I wore them, and I sat around looking bored and disdainful, and people would say, "Oh, that's Kate, she writes." And so I did that for 10 years, and that's why I always think of myself as a late bloomer, because I did nothing from the time I was 20 until the time I was 30, except tell people to watch their step at Walt Disney World. And then, like, right before I turned 30, I thought, I'm gonna have to, I could see that I could spend the rest of my life thinking that I could do this thing and not doing it, and I could see that I was going to be 70 someday and still not have done it. So I started writing, and that doesn't really answer how I found my voice. I don't know where I found my voice.
Well, what do you think gave you the drive and resilience to follow your dream?
The drive and the resilience, because that's something else I always say to the kids. I ask them to guess how many rejection letters I got when I started sending stuff out. And to a room, they start at 3, 5. It's like, nope, nope, nope. 10? 50? No, 470 some rejection letters. And then they always want to know, well, why'd you keep on going? And it's taken me, as I go around and talk to them, it's taken me a while to figure out it's that 10 years of thinking that I could and not doing it. And I thought, I'm never again not gonna try, because I felt like there was something in me and I didn't want to fail for lack of trying. And I always say to them, what if I had stopped at 200? I wouldn't be standing here talking to you. I feel like I'm like the luckiest person in the world in that I found what I'm supposed to do and I get to do it. So.
Well, even in your wildest dreams, did you ever imagine you'd be the ambassador?
I didn't. In my wildest dreams, this was my wild dream. When I sold Because of Winn-Dixie, I was working at a book warehouse in Minneapolis. And so I had a really good idea of how things worked and what to expect. And so I was hoping that I would maybe sell 5,000 copies, which would be enough to let me write another one, and that the ones that got remaindered would be remaindered like in Guatemala, so I wouldn't have to see them at work, you know, every day. And that maybe if I got to do a second book and a third book, that maybe at some point I could go down to working 30 hours a week instead of 40. That was what I hoped for it, because I saw, it was just, I had a very realistic expectation. I was also at work the day that, because I was on the third floor, which was all children's books, and a pallet, a huge pallet of one children's middle grade novel came in. And I remember we all stood around and laughed because we thought that somebody had misordered. It's like, no, you can't get that many middle grade novels. We're going to have to send them back. And it was Harry Potter, which we'd never heard of. So I remember that very clearly. And I think, you know, it's like, ha ha, somebody's messed up, ha ha ha, wow. Yeah.
What kind of kid were you?
I was a kid who lived to read. I was a terrified kid. I was an extremely shy kid, but I was also a sarcastic kid. So, but I was so small that I could convince people that I was smarter than I was because I looked so much younger than I was. I mean, like 2 or 3 years younger. And it's like, oh, she's so smart. But it was just that I was short, you know. That's worn off now, yeah.
Well, now, as an avid reader, what were your favorite books growing up?
Oh, come on. You know that I couldn't possibly say favorites, and I answer this differently every time because I was literally, like, if it was a book, I loved it. There were books that I came back to quite a bit. I loved 21 Balloons. Do y'all remember 21 Balloons?
Yes.
The illustrations in that book, just like, oh boy. That's, you know, I'm not supposed to be going off on a tangent, but when I worked at a used bookstore, and there's this, like this, how do you say, Proust? Is it Proust? You know, and the Madeline. That's what children's books do for people. Like if somebody would come into the bookstore and say, do you remember, have you ever seen a book like blah, 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 and if I could do it, if I could find that book and put it in their hands, it's like it would literally almost knock them off their feet. You know, the power, that's the power of writing for kids. It's the most powerful thing, even for when you're an adult, to hold that book that you loved when you were a kid. So William Penn Dubois, is that how you say it? His illustrations I loved. Little House on the Prairie, Beverly Cleary. I loved Stuart Little. I did not read Charlotte's Web because I read Black Beauty, and What Happened to the Horse was so terrible that I, from that point on, would not check out any book with an animal on the cover. So I would look at Wilbur every week at the library, sitting there in the spin rack, and think something terrible is going to happen to that pig, and I want nothing to do with it. So,
well, I wonder, I was going to talk a little bit, a major thrust of your ambassadorship has been to celebrate the ways in which stories connect us to one another, and the notion that reading together changes everyone involved in a profound way. Kind of sounds like a perfect theme for our conference, and is
Right.
it okay if we borrow it?
Yes, borrow that. Yes, I was afraid that you were going to ask me to explain how that works, which reminds me of those blue books in college. You know, this is an essay question. It's like, I don't know how it works. I just know that it's magic and that it happens, that reading aloud. I always say to parents, ostensibly you're doing it for the child, but really you will find that it gives something to you. And sometimes when I talk to a room full of adults, I'll say, go home and read to your adult, because we forget how much we need it and how much we love to be told a story.
You never seem to write the same book twice in a row. Do you consciously try to mix things up, try different things, or do you just let your project kind of take you where it will?
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. And that has benefited me. And so I don't, because I'm just always kind of like, I feel like I'm walking down a long hallway and I can see a little bit of light at the end of the hallway, but I never know how I'm going to get down there. And so I don't make big plans about what I'm going to do, because I don't know ever what I'm going to do. And I think that even though my books are different, you can find the same. I think that I have the same themes that I keep on turning over and over. You're the critic, though. Is that not true?
Yes. Yeah. I have another question where I said, I think coming up with 3 words to describe your work.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Right now? You're going to do it right now?
Well, I was going to.
Okay.
The ones that come to mind are, I would choose imaginative, thoughtful, and funny. Yet, your stories always have an element of hope and an undeniable hint of sadness.
Yeah, I get in trouble a lot for that sadness. How do y'all feel about sadness? It's okay. But there's joy in there too.
Yeah.
And the world is both of those things. And when I was a kid, always hated it when everything was tied together so neatly, and the world as I saw it was not reflected in the book. The world is complicated, and to tell kids that it's not seems to me to be a huge disservice to kids.
I tend to think of you as having a quintessential American voice, and yet your books have been translated all over the world, 40 languages, 41 I think it said, and they are embraced everywhere. What do you think it is about your work that resonates with the global audience?
I don't know. I'm still surprised that I got published. It's like, and so like you say those numbers of books in print, and you say the languages, and I'm gobstopped. I don't know. Do y'all know? Anybody want to answer that question? Anybody want to ask a question? Can you answer that question? I don't know.
Do you still consider yourself a Southern writer after 20 years in Minnesota?
21 years in Minnesota.
What characterizes a Midwestern writer? What makes an international writer?
Snow boots and international. I don't know. I think of myself always, sometimes when people, we were just in Pittsburgh and there were introductions and kids would stand up and say, author, what does it feel like to be an author? And I always go, God, the author makes me so nervous. Call me a writer, I feel like I'm a storyteller. And so Southern, yes, certainly the South shaped me tremendously. But just that love of story is at the core of me.
I've read that you faithfully write 2 pages a day, 5 days a week. Have you
I
been
saw that on something the other day, and I thought that's not entirely true.
I
but
wondered
it was
about
something
that.
had, yeah. So when I finally thought I could die and not have done this, I was running, and I would run 2 miles every day, and I thought, this is ridiculous that I say I want to be a writer, and I can't commit to doing it, but yet I can commit to running. So I thought, 2 miles, 2 pages. I'm going to write 2 pages a day, and I can't get up until I write the 2 pages. And then I would get up early in the morning before I went to work, and I knew I had to get them done quickly. So it is still the way I work. It's not 5 days a week when I'm home. It's just basically every day. And then when I'm in like final rewrites, it's massive amounts of 2 pages at a time, you know.
Are you able to write while you're on the road?
No, I'm able to eavesdrop while I'm on the road, and that is really, really beneficial. Yeah, yeah.
I did have a question about that.
Uh-oh, yeah.
You know, writers are always asked about where they get their ideas, and I read Kate's answer to this, and I loved the answer, and I think it's an important one to share with kids and adults. You say that the answer is obvious. We get our ideas, and this is a quote, from listening and eavesdropping and imagining. Stories are everywhere. All you have to do is pay attention.
Right, and I always say to the kids, have you been on a city bus recently? If you get on a bus and sit there and watch people and listen to them and take notes if you can get away with it, it's just like there's just so much happening that you're never going to run out of ideas. Right? Do you guys want to ask any questions before should we have them? Oh wait, you've
No,
got
I
another
have
one.
a few
Oh,
more.
okay, all right.
I've read that you are a real champion of the notion of a community read.
Oh yeah.
And what do you see as the potential lasting benefits from these sort of literary initiatives?
Well, it brings the community together, but it also does the same thing that it does for 2 people reading together, where it gives you a common language to talk about things that you might not normally get to talk about, and things that you might not normally talk about. So not only are you brought together around the book, but the book gives you a new way to talk to each other, I think. I don't know.
I did want to ask.
There's so many questions.
I know. Just a few more. Which adult authors do you read and enjoy?
I love so many different adult authors, and that's mostly, I'm probably like 75% contemporary adult fiction and 25% for kids. I love Ann Tyler. There's a passage in The Accidental Tourist that made me want to try and write. I can't recite it for you, but Ann Tyler means the world to me. Alice Munro means the world to me. I have a signed Alice Munro book. Can you believe that? And I go back to her all the time trying to figure out how she does what she does, and I haven't figured it out. You want me to go on?
No.
Okay,
I think,
that's what people generally say. Yes,
that's always the type of question that puts people on the spot. As your ambassadorship, this whirlwind kind of crazy couple of years winds down, what has most surprised you or delighted you as you've been in and out of every airport in America?
Because of the ambassadorship, I've gone places that you wouldn't like normally go on a book tour, and into schools that I wouldn't normally be in, and there's so many dire, there's so much doom and gloom about how kids don't read and don't care about books, and granted, I'm getting a rarefied view of things, but man, I just don't see it. The kids love to read, they love to be read to, they're excited about books. So that to me, it was heartening to see that everywhere I went.
I understand that we have a delicious new novel to look forward to in April.
Who called it delicious?
Well, it sounded delicious in the I haven't been able to review it yet, but
Have you read it?
No,
Oh.
not yet. But the little feelers that were put out really sounded very delicious. Can you tell us a little bit about Raimi Nightingale?
Raimi Nightingale is the title, and it comes out in spring 2016, and it takes place in Central Florida, where I grew up, and it takes place in the mid-'70s when I grew up, and it's about 3 friends. So isn't that, I should be allowed to promote my own stories all the time. Maybe you'll like it, I don't know. Who knows? Maybe you'll buy a copy, I don't know. I was just saying this to somebody earlier today. It's like, it's so nerve-wracking each time. I never know if it's any good or not. Where's Jennifer Roberts? I'm sorry. That's publicity back there. It's an all right book, yeah.
You've also stated that whether you are an adult or a child, there are a lot of ways to connect to a story. Now, that surely seems to be the case with the miraculous journey of Edward Tulane. Can you tell us about how the book became a phenom in Korea?
I don't know, but it is. It showed up on a soap opera in South Korea, and became the #1 best-selling book in South Korea at the same time that in Russia it is a puppet show, a traveling puppet show, and has also been on the stage of the Moscow Theater. I don't know, you know.
Well, it sounds like a miraculous journey.
It is a miraculous journey, yeah.
Thank you, Kate.
Do we want to ask them? Do we have any time to ask? Do you all want to ask any questions before you ask questions of the moderator or the person?
Here's somebody right here.
Yes. Who? Me. So I've had 2 films made because of Winn-Dixie, which you thought was a good movie, and then and Tale of Despereaux, which you did not think was a good movie, and I thought Tale of Despereaux was very beautiful visually, and this is the thing with getting a movie made. You have one thing as the person who's written the book. You have one way to control it, and that is you can say, yes, I'm going to sell the rights, or no, I'm not. And to me, the book always seems like it's my kid, and I want it to go out into the world, and so I let it go. And the other thing about the movies is, this sounds really crass, but they are like spectacular advertisements for books. And so many people found their way to the book because of the movie, readers that I would never have. So I feel like I don't have anything to complain about, you know? So, yes?
When I read some of your books, I like to cry. When you're writing your books, do you laugh? You cry, you laugh. You just touch that emotion. I'm wondering what you do when you write.
So somebody here who laughs and cries, and sometimes laughs until she cries when she's reading my books. All great, thank you. Does the same thing happen to me when I'm writing? Usually I'm so terrified when I'm writing that I don't have time for laughter or tears. But with The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane, that story was one of those stories that it told me what happened, and by the time I got to the end, I was devastated and weeping. And with Flora and Ulysses, which I rewrote something like 7,222 times, I still was laughing on each. It would make me laugh out loud. So, but for the most part, I'm biting my nails and going, how am I going to get through this? And I'm not laughing or crying. Yeah. Oh, Mercy Watson. Yes, Mercy Watson is just an absolute fun. I always think of Mercy Watson as like sorbet in between these heavy meals of novels. Yes, those are a delight because she's a character that all I have to do is put her in a situation and then get out of her way. And I just follow her through the story.
They
She
make
is
me
relentless.
hungry. They make me hungry.
Yeah,
Butter
who doesn't want
toast, butter toast.
But it's so funny because when you write for kids, and I don't know that adult writers get this question, but people always say, now what lesson did you mean to impart here? And those books, the Mercy Watson books, are the answer. Nothing. No one ever learns anything, and they're just a romp. They're just fun. So thank you. Anybody else? I know you guys are probably tired. Go.
Way back.
Yes. And you have such a good loud voice that I thought I was going to be able to do it. No, that's a compliment. But so the animal protagonists, and what couldn't I control? Virtually nothing.
Thanks.
Oh,
That's
yes.
Probably,
okay.
Is that better? Okay. So I'm fascinated by the fact that as a child you were deterred from animal books because you were so worried
Oh,
about
absolutely.
the ending.
It's such a rich irony. The kid me would not read anything that I've written. Yeah, I would go, no, 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 no. Yes.
Right. So what helped you or what forced you into making that transition into using animals as your protagonist?
And kids always ask why so many animals, and I never have an answer that seems to satisfy them or me. I mean, part of it is just that I think that I love animals. Part of it is also that as a reader, I think that you're a little bit more inclined to let down your guard for an animal protagonist. But also I think that, and this I've only come to this realization lately, when I was thinking about Beverly Cleary and The Mouse and the Motorcycle, that those books of my childhood and Stuart Little, it's like those are always at the back of my head. That's where the magic is. And so I think there's a part of the kid me that's going back to the magic of those books that I read when I was a kid before I read Black Beauty, when things went south, So anybody else? Y'all have been very patient. Yes. So, yes. Oh, there was one more down here. John Check, my professor at the University of Florida, yeah, who taught, a children's literature course, yes. I have not heard from him for about a year and a half, and, I've got a whole speech around a project that I did for him where you were supposed to write your family folklore. And I went home the weekend before it was due. It was a semester-long project, and took out the big box of pictures and asked my mother, "Who's this?" I have no idea. So I took those pictures and I made up a family history, and I got an A+. And I didn't confess this to him until 5 years ago. But it was a really important moment for me because I remember looking at those pictures and then making up a life to go with them and thinking, it was the first time I had an idea that maybe I could be a storyteller. And my mother was no help. "Who's this? I don't know. Who's this? I have no idea." So, yeah. Okay, so just make it up. That's what I say. Make it up. Yep. All right, thank you.